All right, there it went. Went boop boop. I've already forgotten what the video number is. I'm sorry, 881. Hi, it's me and you. I'm gonna make a video today, and astute people will notice I'm using my old voice. Um, but I've always told you, like President Biden, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I think you can handle it. Um, but I tend to whatever mood I'm feeling in is how I express myself. And I think there are times I use my newer voice, which I'm not too sure I need to call it that, or I use my voice here, which is my old voice. And I think I'm just going to call it my voice from now on. And, much like gender is a spectrum, and you can say my gender, and it could be anywhere along that spectrum. I think my voice is going to be the same way. And I guess it's something that I've noticed. I went through a period of I felt like something was missing, and I reconnected with part of myself, and I think I still have, but I almost feel like you know how I present myself is kind of on a sliding. Sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that way, sometimes it's that way. Okay, but regardless of what I choose, it's still me, you know, and it's still the authentic me. Um, and I guess that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video here is um, when I get stressed. uh, Well, it's not really true either. It's like whatever I feel like doing is kind of what I want to do. And maybe 6 months ago, I felt like over here. As time has gone on, you know, I could sound a little differently, and that wouldn't change who I am. It's like in the movie um, Tootsie, the end of the movie, where Dustin Hoffman's character is talking to the female lead, and she says something about Dorothy, and he says, "But Dorothy is right here. I am." You know, and I think maybe it's a bit of a, I don't know. I'm not going to say maturity thing or understanding, but however, however I or you, however we choose to be ourselves is okay, you know? And like I said, there are days, and maybe it's a bit of a stretch here, but you might have someone who's somewhat trans masculine, and there are days they get up and put on makeup and a dress and go have fun because that's the way they feel. There might be other days they get up, pull their hair back, put on a flannel, and go outside of go in stay within some gender norms or outside of some gender norms. And it really is up to them to decide what is non-binary, what is trans-masculine, what is trans-feminine, what is, you know, on one hand, labels are good, but on the other hand, um, as many colors as there are in the spectrum. As many flavors of ice cream as there are, probably vanilla still has some variance among it. You know what I mean? Um, and back to the idea of colors, there's more colors out there than the human eye can identify. You know what I mean? There's a limitation in the spectrum of light that we can see and that we can discern. Um, but if you were to talk about the color spectrum, there's colors that are not visible to us. They're still colors and they're still out there. Maybe another creature or maybe someone who has a special ability, a mutation, a difference that will allow them to see, a little bit longer wavelengths or a little bit shorter wavelengths, and regardless of whether we can see them or not, those colors are there. Who's to say? I know that's a bra in the background. It's actually purple, I think. Yeah, it's purple. Um, but let's say it was gray. We may call it gray because that's all we can see it as. But maybe another organism can see it as just a little different color. You know what I mean? So I guess there's that. But um, I guess I just wanted to say that, like I said, there are moments. I talk this way. There's moments I talk in a higher pitched voice. It's still me, and I haven't worn makeup in a while. Today I was like, I want to play with eyeliner and do the little wee wings, and by golly, can't we just have the freedom to do what we want to do and to not have to put it into a box, a gender box? Um, I've had friends um, who have kind of gone through the process and kind of say they don't feel like they're female enough or woman enough, and they say, well, I'm non-binary, and I just feel like it's a cat. Do you hear that? Bonk. Again, who decides what that label means? I know there's from a medical point of view, there's a definition. And my new job that I'm being trained for, I work with CPT codes. ISD 9, ISD 10 codes. You have a diagnosis, you have to be very specific, right? On a medical claim, what this is. This could be a uh, an injection in the exact point of the body. I mean, you have to be very specific. But I think for ourselves, I almost wonder. Um, I don't know. For me, I want a very big slate. I want a lot of latitude. And if I feel this way, I feel this way. You know, it doesn't make me any less or more disingenuous. I'll put it to you that way. And maybe for me, because this is kind of my point of view, that's what makes sense for me. It may not make sense for someone else. You know, that's where we're all different. And you know, that's okay, isn't it? Um, so yeah, some other things going on. We'll get past that. Um, I you know, got my first paycheck this week. It's nice to have food again. Um, it's not a whole lot more, but it's a little more. And I pay off my car in a couple months. And so that gives me a little extra room. We have a little extra room and then we'll have a little more extra room. It's not enough to go crazy, but it's enough that I can start to put a little aside, you know. and have a little bit of a cushion for emergencies, and eventually get to the point that I'll be able to, once you have that, they say 3 months worth of expenses, um, I'll be able to start to think maybe about a house or something. And so that's kind of been my new obsession, is where I want to do. And if I was sort of limited because my daughter has 2 years of high school left, and so I need to stay local for 2 more years. And then I realized, since I work from home, as long as you have an internet connection, you can work anywhere. You know, I mean, it's in the job description that I mean, it's not a you're not tied to a specific place. And so then I was like, well, let's look around, and where, if you could go anywhere in the United States, where would you want to go? And for me, um, when I was a little girl, I volunteered at a summer camp in Colorado for a couple years, and I fell in love with Colorado. I went back twice to work at the summer camp, and I mean, I just love Colorado, you know, and you know, I could go live in Colorado. You know what I mean? So, this week, the last couple of days, I've kind of been thinking about, well, what do I want to do? We talked about that before. When you get to the point that you can start to think about what you want to do and where you want to go, and um, you know, it's somewhat scary because it's an open, you know what I mean? If you have enough time, and I don't want to live extravagantly. Um, the houses that I've looked at, it seems like houses in the last 20 years, um, if you go into a new housing complex or whatever, the houses are put, right next to each other, like touching each other. You could stand, and I'm 6 foot tall, so that means I have a 6 foot reach, but probably an 8 foot reach, you could touch both houses. And that's not the way that I grew up. The house that I grew up in, had a yard that, was full circle, was probably 12 feet, um, away from my house. Well, take that back, 20 feet between houses on one side, and then a backyard, big backyard, and a front yard. And then a side yard that was, also 12 to 25 feet. So, when I think of a house, that's kind of what I think about. And I don't want to live on a house with that and it being grass. I'd really like to live in a wooded area. So anyway, it seems like houses today are like squished together next to each other. Or if you have a little bit of a decent yard, the houses are humongous. I mean, they're huge, these huge houses that is just it's just too much space. It's too much square feet for one person to live in. So I'm kind of looking at an older house, kind of like that I lived in, that probably would have been built from the 1970s, or before. And I've kind of hit upon a house that was built. I'm looking at it now, and I made the picture of it in my desktop, but uh, it's a cabin in Indiana that was built in 1890, and it's so old. I'm looking at it, like I said, the floorboards are actually have wooden nails in them. Okay, this house was custom built with wooden nails. You know what I mean? Um, it's a beautiful old cabin. You that really is more up my alley. But it's made me ask a couple questions as far as what do I want? Where do I want to live? Do I want to live that far away from people? This would be easily from someone for someone who lives in town, it would be a 30-minute drive to go from one place to the other. Whereas here, it's kind of the same thing. I live in southern Indiana, and everyone else I know pretty much lives in Louisville somewhere. So for me to go meet them to play a game or have coffee or something, I mean, it's a 40-minute drive anyway, and then I got to pay tolls to cross the bridge. Um, so it's really not that much of a change, but you know what I mean? It's like, how close do I want to live and where do I want to go? And so, I kind of have that kind of going on. So that's a little wonky. And then the last thing that I kind of have, let me take a little, the last thing that I have kind of going on is kind of been doing a little bit of pre-dating. Is the only way I can describe it. Um, I've been meeting, um, guys for coffee or other things, and my thought was it would be like the romantic date, like, and it hasn't been that way. you know, the last time that I dated was before my transition, and uh, I was in my early 30s, you know, and now where I am now, I'm dating guys that are like 55 or 60, and I look at them because I forget what I look like. And I see them and I'm like, oh, that's an old man I'm not really attracted to. I might see one someday, maybe. But you know what I mean? It's like maybe my psyche is I won't say I'm a 12-year-old girl, but I'm maybe a 16-year-old girl, in trans years from my second puberty. And, uh, an older man like gray beard and, just doesn't really turn me on. I mean, doesn't, it's not a bad choice of words. Doesn't really, you know what I mean? Not to say I don't know my type, you know. Jokingly, I would say Thor, Chris Hemsworth. I think he's pretty handsome. Um, but you know what I mean? Like, again, it was almost like a Christmas morning letdown. It was like, yeah. Um, so it kind of, I don't know, made me think about I may not find somebody. I mean, I may kind of live alone for the rest of my life. And maybe that's the way it was meant to be. You know what I mean? I didn't have a strong growing up. I didn't have the strong sexual urge towards anybody. And I still kind of don't, which makes me kind of say, well, are you asexual maybe? And maybe you're just not going to have that. You know. Um, so maybe I'll meet just a guy and we'll be good friends, and it might just be I hate to say a platonic friendship, but maybe that's the way it goes. But definitely, if I make this decision in 2 or 3 years, knock on wood, say I'm able to raise the funds and I move out to where I want to move, I'm going to be in a rural area in the middle of a forest. I mean, um, what are my chances? But maybe that's the scenario. Maybe that's where I meet Farmer Ted at the Rural King, buying feed. The cabin that again, this cabin, this 1890 cabin, has horse stables on it, and a place for, like, a small farm. It's a chicken, just has a chicken area on it. And I mean, maybe that is it, if that's it. You know what I mean? We just don't know. Or the strange. I don't know. You have uh you have you know romance book, Hallmark movie type shit that's may or may not be true, hokey crap, um but I don't know. I didn't have that, you know I didn't have that in my marriage. you know we were, it wasn't stop my heart. You know what I mean? Which again might be totally fictitious. And, but excuse me. Um, um, once again, I guess I'm surprised by life. I'm surprised by life constantly. Not to say I'll ever have it figured out. Again, if I go, like I said, live in my cabin in the woods, um, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of maybe a man or a woman, a wife or a husband who their spouse maybe dies. And so they're a widower, and they live out, the last 10 to 15 years of their life alone, you know, and, you know, they miss having that person around. Um, but they learn to live and appreciate other things, you know. On the other hand, because I've never known it, having a tight bond, you can't miss what you don't, loving someone and losing them, you feel that remorse, you feel that loss. But if you've never had that deep connection, you know what I mean, you're not going to really miss it. I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of my ass. But anyway, food for thought. Food for thought. I have a lot of kind of just weird thoughts. Like I said, I feel like if it's even possible, more opportunity has. I thought I had. I don't have a third hand to. You know, more has another dimension here has opened up, and I'm going. What am I gonna do? You know, I have a lot of Lego pieces that I don't necessarily know where they fit, but maybe they'll fit later. That I didn't have before. So anyway, and really that's just about it. Just kind of checking in. And um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Perhaps the upshot is we never know. We never know what the future holds. But some of the videos that I had seen before I transitioned, it was, you know, person person transitioned, person looks different, and they're happy, and that's it. you know Whereas for me, I found a lot of ups and downs. And I mean, you know it's 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 not a straight road by any means. And maybe that's just life. Maybe that is the truth, and we just never got to see the other parts of it. I don't know. Anyway, it'd be interesting to find out. So we'll see where we're at. I did send an email today to the realtor, like I said, of this cabin, and the I did a search of the city that it's near, and they have a it was a I guess it was a realtor, and she had her mortgage lender with her, and they were talking about the pros and cons of living where I want to live. And so I shot an email to both of them, kind of saying I'm looking at living out there. What can you help me understand? What do I need to do? Um, which may pop my bubble a little bit. Let's say that you know there's not a chance in hell that I'll be able to raise the money, but you don't know till you try. And I'd kind of like a reality check to say, okay, um, you know, maybe this isn't something I can do in 2 years. Maybe this is something I can do in 4 years, or 5 years, or 6 years. Try and figure out how long it would take. Now, something else that I have kind of in my life is and not something I want to count on, and not something I'm going, but in all likelihood, in the next couple years, you know, my mom or my dad may pass away. And if there's any money coming my way, I might be able to use that as a down payment, or what do you call it? Money down on a house, possibly. I don't, it's not something I'm hoping for, but, I'm 50 years old. My dad is 85. My mom is 81. Um, if there is anything coming my way, it could be something that might tip the scales in my favor. You know. So anyway, on that note, if you hopefully you don't think I'm an opportunistic hag. I'm not. I'm just trying to be realistic. You know, if there's not something I can't do on my own, you know, something might come my way that will tip the scales. We'll see. But as a parent, I want to provide a good place for my daughter, and that's kind of the other thing where I'm moving. Well, it's if I was to move there, it has three universities, much like here in the University of, much like here in Louisville, you have, University of Louisville, you have Spalding University, three or four different other little colleges, um, IU, University of University of Indiana Southeast. There are four. Louisville has, like, depending on what you consider a college or a university to be, multiple options, and this would be the same situation. So if she was to stay with me, she could, or she might want to stay here. Again, I don't know. Um, my experience with when I was in high school, you know, my folks pretty much had a plan for me to leave, and I bought into it. I'd like my daughter to feel like if she wanted to stay with me, she could. You know, not going to push her out of the house. Um, but if I can work it out so that when she does graduate, the understanding that I'm not going to stick around town. We'll see. We'll see. Again, that's where that map is just kind of like like a Rubik's snake. Remember the Rubik's? I know you know the Rubik's cube, but the Rubik's snake was this long thing that you could make into a ball, or different, like a puppy dog, different shapes. So, anyway, until next time, best of luck to you and all that you do in becoming your authentic self. Bye bye.